Hey everybody, hope and pray that you're doing well. Today as we come to our word from the word, and today that word is restrict. Restrict. Have you ever heard that phrase, don't put God in a box? And what they mean by that, and what I mean by that when I say that is we can't limit God. It's like we try to fit him inside our little box so we can carry him with us everywhere, but that's not the way God works. And a lot of times it's kind of like we think if we can figure him out completely, then that's kind of us putting him in a box. Because I can tell you, if we can completely figure out God, then he's not God. And we just can't wrap our minds around everything. But by his grace and mercy, the way that he allows the Holy Spirit to reside in our lives as believers, wow, it is just amazing what he can do. But now today in our passage, 2 Kings chapter 13 today, and you see Elisha right here at the end of his life, and the king is coming out. He finds out that Elisha is sick, and this is actually the sickness that will take him on to be in glory. But the king knows, so he goes to see him, and you can tell that how important he is to him, even though the king is not necessarily a true believer, doesn't have the faith in God that he should. But at least he recognizes that it's God looking out over his people, that it is God in control. And you'll see that even today and in tomorrow's passage as well. But today, I want us to look at how we sometimes, I believe, restrict God. And we do it so through prayer. And here he is seeking the man of God, he's seeking the prophet so that he can get a word from heaven. And so, 2 Kings chapter 13, looking at verses 18 and 19. You'll see if you go back, as always, I encourage you to read the whole passage. He basically tells the king to aim towards the window and shoot an arrow out. He puts his hands over the king's hands, and the king would have known that this was symbolizing God's power working through Elisha, and that it was symbolic of something. And this is what Elisha has already told him, that it would be victory. But here in verse 18, he says, Then he said, Take the arrows. So he took them, and he said to the king of Israel, Strike the ground. So he struck 3 times and stopped. And the man of God was angry with him and said, You should have struck 5 or 6 times. Then you would have struck Syria till you had destroyed it. But now you will strike Syria only 3 times. Now, some commentators will argue that when he says he struck the ground with arrows, that he was talking about just shooting the other arrows into the ground. And that very well could be the case, but it really doesn't matter. The point is that he could have struck the ground. Let's just say that he had the rest of the arrows in his hand and he was just to strike the ground with them. He just hit 3 times. Now, he would have already known by what Elisha said that the one arrow he shot out the window was assuring them victory. So he should have known that the next would be some type of symbol of victory as well. The problem is he wasn't truly a man of faith, so I don't know that he really believed that God was going to do all that Elisha had just said. But regardless, it got me to thinking of how many times we stop short and we restrict God in by our lack of faith. And it's exactly what Elisha told him. He says, Look, if you'd have struck the ground 5 or 6 times, you could have completely wiped out the enemy. But no, because you only wanted to do it 3 times, then that's all you're going to get in return. In other words, it's like I think sometimes our prayers aren't big enough. Our asks aren't big enough. We don't ask those big questions of God sometimes. We don't step out in those big moments of faith. And I'm here, I'm struggling right along with you that there's times where, I feel like, man, if God really convicts us, I read stories and testimonies of ones who have stepped out in great faith. And as we're talking about faith this year and looking through Hebrews 11, and you see by faith, by faith, by faith. I wonder how many times we restrict God by our lack of faith. Not by our faith, but by our lack of faith. I wonder today how we could really unleash the power of God in our lives if we would simply trust Him, if we would simply take Him at His word, if we would simply believe and have faith in the impossible. Now, if you think this story is something, wait until the story we talk about tomorrow. God bless you, and I pray you have a great, great day.